If you believe what you read in the newspapers, over all the years that you've been in this business, you've had a lot of very, very close relationships with the people you work with. Be they personal or very intense working relationships. Are they very important, those things, in creating the music you've made over the years?
In order to get the right spirit into the music, there's got to be more than a working relationship. There has to be a sense of passion about it. You know, to make an ideal communication, you know, to get close to the truth of anything, you have to be able to address yourself to at least 4 spirits. You know, there has to be something there for the heart, there has to be something there for the intellect, there has to be something there for sensuality and sensation, and there has to be some wit, you know, some things that are direct hits, brief and clear. And if you get the right amount of those vegetables into the broth, you know, then it's satisfying to me personally. The trouble is that the people who are heart primarily, they get their little part that's for heart, and then it goes zooming off into intellect, and they get left out, or intellect finding a pocket of heart says, oh, this is soppy, and blocks it, you know. So to make a complete communication and hold it there is very difficult. Music is kind of a romance language. Without a certain amount of chemistry between players, it's kind of lifeless. I mean, when I was working on Court and Spark, I told Henry Louis, set me up facing the drummer, John Guerin. We had just met. We lived together for some years after that. But he had this look in his eyes, you know, when he played, you know, and I said, you gotta set up the vocal booth facing the drummer, because he gave me this fiery support, you know, and it pushed the music to a level that wouldn't have otherwise achieved.
How has marriage changed you? You and Larry together. Do you think that relationship has changed you?
Oh yeah, I'm a little more settled. You know, being single is restless business. You're always prowling about.
But you are a restless spirit, isn't it? That is Joni Mitchell.
Well, I like to travel, but he and I travel very well together. We're good traveling companions. We have terrific fights, excellent fights. We both, you know, put up our dukes, but we both know when to surrender. You know, if we're wrong, we both give over eventually. And it doesn't take that long. So that we don't seem to... We've been together 4 years now. That's as long as I've been with anybody. I've always been a runner, you know. Too much aggravation, you know, let's get out of here. But the thing that's great about Larry and my relationship is that we don't keep score. There's no backlog of things that are undealt with piling up behind us. You know, we were as clear with one another as we were, you know, in the middle of the honeymoon. So clearer, actually, because that's very hectic, the honeymoon part. You know, it's like you couldn't go on there forever. Caught in the middle.
You never seem worried about laying your spirit on the line, bearing your soul.
Well, I guess that's unusual in pop music. It's not unusual in short stories or any other literary form. The difference is pop arts, which have in accompaniment so much personal scrutiny. In that context, it is peculiar. I guess I think Dylan's work is very personal, except that he says you all the time instead of I, which keeps things at arm's length from that which is personal.
Let's talk about a favourite song of mine then, Coyote. Is that actually based on a real event? Is it true?
I have to think about it. How do the words go?
You ask me.
No regrets, Coyote. That has a certain amount of autobiography to it, definitely. Mm-hmm. I always think of it, when I think of the song now, I think of a coyote chasing a mouse around, because when we did a video years ago, that's what we used to illustrate it. So now I don't think of it as being me at all, but rather this coyote chasing a mouse around.
No regrets. By the time of Coyote, Joni Mitchell's music was turning from folk to jazz, the acoustic guitar and dulcimer augmented by the improvisational playing of musicians like Pat Metheny and Jaco Pastorius. But in 1979, she surprised even her most loyal fans with her free-form tribute to the legendary Charlie Mingus.
At that point, I had gotten used to being a cottage industry, you know, sitting in kind of comfortable obscurity. From the time that Hissing of Summer Lawns was released, and it was described that I had entered into jazz, which wasn't entirely true. The jazz community didn't see it as jazz. It didn't bear any resemblance to jazz forms. I was in a kind of a no man's land as far as programming went.
You mean being played on the radio and things like that?
Yeah. It didn't slot. You know, pop music now has opened up to embrace some jazz coloration still in the pop context, but then it didn't. So by the time I got to Mingus, I was used to disappointments, you know. Hissing was the worst. After that, you know, you just said, oh. I remember getting a letter from Joe Smith, who was the president of the company at that time, and he didn't have to write this. It was a very nice letter. It seemed to come from his heart, personal statement. He said, in all his years in the industry, he had never been so proud to release a record as this one. Then he shipped 5 copies. I'm down to roll it down. I'm stuck in the slot that's hot.
Do you feel it was a successful experiment?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah, I would do it again in a minute. I mean, if I was to do it now, I might do it differently. Musically, at that time, I felt that coming into the jazz arena for the first time, for real, in the idiom, that I wanted to come in fresh. I wanted to make a record that was unlike anything that I had ever heard. And one of the ways to go about that was I wanted every one of us to be playing off the other. The drums weren't really keeping strict time. They were playing expressively. And as a result, it's kind of a Jackson Pollock. It's very free. Everything is interwoven. You'll hear the drummer play off the bass, or he'll play off of the horn, or play off of my voice. There's a lot of keen listening going on, even though everything is kind of flying around. It's very alert and spontaneous.